no matter what happens, we are going to have a
Mm,
system that looks far different than it does today. I mean, one of the good things I think Trump uh, is going to try to do is to bring Judy Shelton into the Federal Reserve, and
mm.
she is a hard money advocate. The problem is the system as it is. You can't. It's going in one direction. It's got to go straight. There can't be any turns,
Mm.
and because it's so fragile, it's so precarious at this point. I will say that uh, I felt good for a week, and I think people, generally speaking, well, half the country or a little more than half the country felt good from election day. I felt good from election day until yesterday when some of his choices from the cabinet came up. I mean, Elise Stefanik, uh, he's it's like we're doing the whole thing all over again with war hawks in his
Yeah.
cabinet. Yeah, I mean, especially if Marco Rubio becomes chief of staff, or not chief of staff,
State,
secretary
Sec- Secretary of
of
State.
state. Uh, yeah, I mean, he's a war hawk. And I read a quote, and it was kind of humorous that no matter who you voted for, or no matter who we vote in, we always end up with John McCain. And John McCain, the ultimate war hawk, and that's again, it looks like that's what's just going to be a replay, but it'll
Well,
be more entertaining for sure. I mean, the pullback in gold is what, 6%, 7%, and
right.
silver bigger, but silver's always more volatile than gold. I think it's interesting that a couple of weeks back, Russia came out and said that they're going to buy other commodities other than gold, and the first one they listed is silver.
Yep.
And I will just say that silver is such a small market where Russia to try to come in and buy 200. If Russia were to come in and try to buy 250 million, 500 million, $1 billion worth of silver, I think that would probably clean up any and all of available silver. So, whether they do that or not, to this point, Russia and China have pretty much let the U.S. go down the road to perdition on their own volition, rather than trying to push the U.S. off a cliff
Mm.
because they don't want war. Now, if Russia steps up and breaks the silver market, yeah, those could be construed as fighting words, and you'd have a war. My guess is that Russia's probably, going to pick away with smallish trades, 25, $50 million, um, just to keep, just to turn the screws a little bit, but not enough to put it over the edge. The situation, the way it is right now, well, I think the last number I saw was there's 406 uh, paper gold ounces or silver ounces for every single silver ounce that exists.
Really?
I mean, how's that even possible? Yeah, if you look at the contracts, the LBMA contracts, the COMEX contracts, there's far, far more silver represented by paper than there is silver. Current monetary system as is will no longer exist. Because what will happen is, and I've said this for years, is that silver is the fuse to the gold bomb.
Mm.
And I mean, gold is uh, the antithesis of fiat currencies. It's kryptonite to fiat currencies. And I mean, you can look at the dollar index, but that compares the dollar versus other currencies. What you need to compare the dollar to is, how many cups of coffee does it buy? How
Right.
many gallons of gas does it buy? How many ounces does it buy? And the problem, as I've seen it over the years, is that uh, it's reversed. You should look at gold as, or you should look at dollars as 1/2600th of an ounce, and that's gone from 1/250th. I mean, back in 2000, 2001, gold traded down to $252. So here it is at 2,600. That means the dollar has lost not over 90% of its value this century. Trump is a gold guy. Trump wants a weaker dollar. Trump, think about his businesses. Trump wants inflation because that inflates debt away. So, yeah, I think any and all commodities will get a boost. Will get a boost from the viewpoint, if you will, of the administration wanting a weaker dollar. Now, on the other hand, you've got economies that are rolling over. China is rolling over. China's demand is down. They have a debt problem. We have a debt problem. The world has a debt problem. And if you liquidate that debt, business, the real economy, real business is definitely going to slow and go into reverse. So how much oil is going to be used? Is the demand going to go up or down? It's going to go down. If you look at the deficit spending each year, and I just posted this article last night, and somebody wrote about it, did some math on it. But if you look at the deficit spending year after year, and here we are, we're at $2 trillion. When the government borrows that $2 trillion, they spend it. It gets spent into the real economy, and thus it goes into GDP numbers. If we, the study this guy did, and it makes sense, if you compare GDP growth versus M2, or if you compare it versus the fiscal spending, so that's monetary and fiscal, we've not had any growth at all since 2008. It's the quantity of M2. It's the quantity of, just for example, last year, $2 trillion deficit that got spent into the economy and is part of GDP. If there was not a $2 trillion deficit, GDP would have been $2 trillion less. We would have had a shrinking economy. That's what I'm getting at.
Gotcha.
And they've used money supply like a fire hose and just sprayed it over the whole system because we've had these liquidity problems because there's too much debt and they have to reflate each time. So they have to keep borrowing more and more in order to put it into the economy, in order to, show, and they show nominal growth, but they call it real growth. But there's no adjustment for this debt that's being taken on, that's being pumped, into the real economy. I thought this on my own, just from a gut feel that things have not been right since 2008. And we know that a lot of the economic and financial numbers that we get, not a lot, probably the vast majority, are all bullshit. They're all made up. And then they adjust it 6 months or a year later and nobody pays attention to it. But I have felt that we never got past the recovery stage. We never got to. I can remember in 2014-15 writing a couple articles that we never got to the expansion phase. We got the recovery, from the depths of the 2008-2009 recession, but we never grew from there. The only growth that we had was spurred by deficit spending and money supply growth. You don't see the pictures like you did in 1931, 2, 3, lines going around the block to get a loaf of bread. Just stand at a checkout counter for 10 minutes and see how many people come through with EBT cards. Quite a few. I live in Texas, and I can tell you 15 years ago, 20 years ago, there was, I knew the manager of a grocery store, and this was a border town. This was, 8 miles from the Rio Grande River. And he was telling me that something like 93% of all sales in his grocery store or EBT cards, or whatever they call
93?
them back then. 93%, yeah. Uh, that's the word, prep. Just get ready for the shit house to come down and you to be on your own. You know, you're going to
Hmm.
dial 911, nobody's going to pick up. You're going to call an ambulance, it's not going to show up. Uh, the, will you have electricity? Will you have water? I mean, I don't know, but I can tell you that in a credit meltdown, and that's where we're headed, is a credit slash currency meltdown, nothing will operate. Everything, and I do mean everything, runs on credit.